Welcome to Neural Nexus Podcast, where we explore the hottest topics shaping the world. Let's dive in.
All right, so today we're gonna dive into something pretty heavy.
Yeah.
A mass shooting in Queens on New Year's Day.
Right.
10 people injured at a nightclub.
Yeah.
It's the kind of story that, makes you want to just stay home and lock
Okay.
the doors. But we're gonna try to unpack this and see if there's more to it than just another, tragic headline.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's always more to uncover.
Okay.
I think we need to understand the details, but also the context, the why behind it all.
Yeah, so picture this. You're in Jamaica, Queens. Early hours of New Year's Day.
Okay.
A club called Amazura. It's packed. People are waiting to get in.
Right.
And suddenly shots ring out, chaos.
Yeah.
Sounds like a movie, right?
Sadly, it's a reality for too many. And as we dig into the source material, this wasn't just some random New Year's Eve brawl gone wrong.
Right.
This party was a memorial for a gang member who was killed back in October.
Wait, so a gang member's memorial,
Yeah,
that definitely changes things.
it does.
Could this be retaliation? Some kind of score settling?
Okay. It's a strong possibility. Gang-related violence often has a ripple effect. It's not just about the initial incident, but the potential for ongoing feuds and retribution.
And this shooting happened outside the club, right?
That's right.
So imagine like you're just standing there, waiting to get in, maybe checking your phone, and suddenly you're caught in the crossfire.
Exactly. It speaks to the brazen nature of this attack. The suspects described as maybe 2 or 3 individuals just walked up and started firing into this crowd of about 80 people.
Wow.
No regard for who got hurt.
That's terrifying.
Mm.
One detail that really struck me was that 3 of the victims walked themselves to the hospital.
Oh, wow.
I mean, talk about a chaotic scene.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, does this say something about the community's relationship with law enforcement?
It's an interesting observation. In some communities, there might be a reluctance to involve the police. Even in situations like this, maybe fear, maybe distrust, maybe past negative experiences. It's a complex issue that goes beyond this specific event.
It also makes you wonder about, access to health care in the area. If people are opting to walk to the hospital after a shooting, that tells something about maybe their faith in emergency services.
Absolutely. It raises questions about the availability of ambulances, the perceived quality of care at different hospitals, and even just the physical proximity of medical facilities to where they live. It's a whole other layer to this story.
Yeah, and speaking of layers, here's something that sent chills down my spine. This wasn't the first shooting in Amazura.
Oh, really?
Remember, we're talking about the same club where 2 people were shot back in April 2024.
Right. And that detail adds a whole new dimension to our investigation. It's starting to feel less like a coincidence and more like a pattern.
Right.
What's going on at this club that makes it a magnet for violence?
Yeah. Is the security issue? Are they not doing enough to prevent these incidents? Or is there something about the location itself,
Right.
the clientele, the types of events they host? I'm starting to get a bad feeling about this place.
It definitely raises red flags if there have been multiple shootings at the same venue. You have to question the management's commitment to safety. Are they cutting corners, ignoring warning signs?
And let's not forget the location itself.
Right.
Amazura is just a stone's throw from the Jamaica LIRR station that's a major transit hub,
Right.
constantly buzzing with people.
Excellent point. That proximity to a major transportation hub adds another layer of complexity to the situation. On one hand, it could make the club more accessible to a wider range of people, potentially increasing the chances of conflicts.
Right.
But on the other hand, as we've seen, it also makes it easier for perpetrators to escape quickly. They can blend into the crowds, disappear onto a train, and vanish without a trace. It becomes a nightmare for investigators trying to piece together what happened.
It's like a getaway car built into the location.
Exactly.
Makes you wonder how much thought went into, the placement of this club in the first place and the potential risks involved. But you mentioned something about investigators. What kind of evidence would they even be looking for in a case like this?
Well, imagine a chaotic scene like this. Dozens of potential witnesses, many of them terrified or traumatized. It's a massive undertaking to gather reliable accounts. But there's also physical evidence to consider: shell casings scattered across the parking lot, maybe blood stains, and crucially, security footage. If they're lucky, there might be cameras that capture the shooting itself, or at least the suspects arriving or fleeing.
So we're talking about ballistics, DNA, maybe even facial recognition technology. It
Exactly.
sounds like CSI, but in real life.
Exactly. And piecing together all that evidence, Analyzing it and using it to build a case can take months, even years.
Okay, so we've got a complex investigation on our hands.
Mhm.
Potential gang involvement,
Right.
a location that seems prone to trouble. Where do we go from here? What's the next layer of this onion?
I think it's time to step back and look at the bigger picture. This isn't just about one nightclub or one shooting. This is about a city grappling with gun violence, about communities struggling with safety and fear.
Yeah, you're right. This isn't just another news story. It's a symptom of a much larger issue, and frankly, it's pretty overwhelming to think about.
Yeah.
Where do you even begin to tackle something as big as gun violence in a city like New York?
It's definitely a multifaceted problem, but I think one key is to, move beyond these simplistic solutions. We often hear calls for more police stricter laws.
Right.
But those are just band-aids. We need to dig deeper, look at the root causes, the why behind the trigger.
Okay, so what are some of those root causes? What's fueling this cycle of violence?
Well, it's a complex web of factors. We can't ignore the socioeconomic realities in many of these communities. Poverty, lack of opportunity, failing schools. These create a breeding ground for despair and desperation.
So you're saying it's not just about, bad guys with guns.
Right.
It's about systemic issues
Right.
that make it harder for people to thrive.
Exactly. And when you add in the historical context, the generations of trauma and disinvestment in certain neighborhoods, it's not surprising that violence becomes a way of life for some.
Okay, so that's the why. But what about the how do we actually break this cycle?
Right.
Is it even possible?
It is, but it requires a multi-pronged approach, right? Law enforcement has its role, of course,
Yeah.
but we also need to invest in these community-based solutions, things like youth mentorship programs, job training, conflict resolution initiatives. These are proven to be effective in reducing violence.
So it's about giving people alternatives, showing them a different path.
Exactly. And it's also about addressing the trauma that fuels this violence. We need to provide mental health services, support for families, create a sense of hope and healing.
Okay, that all makes sense. But I got to be honest, it feels a bit like a utopian dream,
Sure.
Like, can we really fix all these deep-seated problems?
It's not easy, that's for sure. But I think it's about changing the narrative. Instead of focusing solely on punishment and retribution, we need to shift the focus to prevention and rehabilitation.
And what about the role of guns themselves?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like every time one of these tragedies happens, the debate about gun control flares up. Where do you stand on that?
It's a contentious issue, no doubt, but I
Yeah.
think we need to be honest about the role that, easy access to firearms plays in fueling this violence.
So stricter gun laws could be part of the solution.
They could be a piece of the puzzle, yes, but it's not a simple answer. We need to look at things like background checks, waiting periods, restrictions on certain types of weapons.
Okay, so we've got poverty, lack of opportunity, trauma, easy access to guns. It's starting to feel like a pretty bleak picture.
Yeah.
Is there anything about this specific case, this shooting at Amazura, that gives you a glimmer of hope?
Well, one thing that stands out is the fact that witnesses are cooperating with the police. The article mentions several people coming forward with information.
Really, you'd think people would be too scared to talk,
And-
especially with the potential gang involvement.
It's encouraging. It suggests that there's a sense of community, a desire for justice, even in the face of fear.
That's actually really heartwarming to hear.
Yeah.
So maybe there is a chance those responsible will be caught, and that could bring some closure to the victims and their families.
Accountability is crucial. It sends a message that this kind of violence won't be tolerated, but it's also about deterring future violence if people see that there are consequences for their actions. They might think twice before resorting to violence.
Okay, so we talked about the broader context of gun violence, the systemic issues, the potential solutions, but let's circle back to this specific case.
Okay.
Remember how we were talking about the possibility of this being a targeted attack, maybe retaliation for that gang member's death back in October?
Right. And that angle can't be ignored if we're going to prevent future incidents like this. We need to understand the motivations behind them.
So how do investigators even begin to unravel something like that? It seems incredibly difficult to get inside the minds of these gangs to figure out their motives and their networks.
It requires a deep understanding of gang culture, their codes of conduct, their internal hierarchies. It's like trying to crack a secret code.
So you're saying it's more than just good detective work, it's almost like anthropology.
Exactly. It's about building trust with informants, understanding the nuances of their language, their symbols, their rituals. It's a long and painstaking process.
And all of this is happening against the backdrop of a community that's likely traumatized and hesitant to talk to the police.
Right.
It's a tough situation all around.
It is, but there are dedicated individuals within law enforcement who specialize in gang-related investigations. They have the experience and the expertise to navigate these complex situations.
You know, one thing that keeps coming back to me is the fact that this shooting happened at a nightclub, a place that's supposed to be about fun and celebration.
Yeah.
It feels like such a violation, a reminder that violence can intrude on even the most seemingly safe spaces.
It's a stark reminder of the pervasiveness of this issue. Gun violence can touch any corner of society, regardless of socioeconomic status, race, or ethnicity.
And it also highlights the responsibility of businesses, especially nightclubs, to ensure the safety of their patrons.
Right.
If this is the second shooting in Amazura, you have to wonder if they're doing enough to prevent these incidents.
Absolutely. Security measures, crowd control, even the type of events they host can play a role in creating a safe environment.
And what about the role of the community? Can they do anything to help prevent these tragedies?
Community involvement is crucial. It's about fostering a culture of nonviolence, providing positive alternatives for young people, and reporting suspicious activity.
So the collective effort, everyone working together to create a safer environment.
Yeah.
But I have to ask, with all the factors we've discussed, the poverty, the gangs, the easy access to guns, do you really think this shooting could have been prevented?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one we need to grapple with. But I think it's important to remember that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges, there is always hope.
Hope is a powerful thing, but it can feel pretty fragile when you're talking about a situation like this.
I understand.
So much pain, so much complexity. It's easy to feel overwhelmed and just kind of throw your hands up.
Yeah, I get that. But I think the key is to focus on what we can control. We can't change the past, but we can learn from it.
Right.
We can use this tragedy as a catalyst for change, a reminder that we need to do better.
So if we're looking for takeaways for actionable steps, where do we even begin?
I think it starts with awareness. We need to educate ourselves about the root causes of gun violence, the systemic factors that contribute to it, the impact on communities.
So knowledge is power.
Absolutely. The more we understand the problem, the better equipped we are to find solutions.
Okay, so we've got awareness. What's next?
Action. We need to support organizations that are working to address this issue. There are groups out there doing incredible work in violence prevention, community outreach, youth mentorship. They need our support, our donations, our volunteer hours.
So put your money where your mouth is, right?
Exactly. And we can also advocate for change at the policy level. Contact your elected officials, demand action on gun control support legislation that addresses poverty and inequality.
So use your voice, make yourself heard. But what about on a more personal level? What can individuals do in their own communities to make a difference?
There's a lot we can do. Start by having conversations with your family and friends, break the stigma around mental health, encourage people to seek help when they need it, be a mentor to a young person, offer support to a struggling family. Small acts of kindness can have a ripple effect.
You know, it's funny. We started this deep dive feeling pretty heavy, pretty overwhelmed by the scale of this problem, but I'm actually feeling a bit more hopeful now.
Good.
Like, okay, this is a complex issue. There's no easy fix, but there are things we can do.
That's the spirit. It's not about finding a magic bullet. It's about chipping away at the problem one step at a time. And remember, you don't have to do everything. Just do something.
That's a great point. Even small actions can make a difference. So listeners, we wrap up this deep dive. We leave you with this challenge. What's one thing you can do today, this week, this month, to help create a safer, more peaceful community? It could be a conversation, a donation, a volunteer opportunity, whatever it is, take that step.
And remember, hope is not passive. It's an active choice, a commitment to working towards a better future.
Beautifully said, and on that note, we'll leave you to ponder that challenge. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay hopeful.